Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is January 24th, 2018. When we're not online here giving this briefing, you can always call and check our 1-800 line at 1-800-472-0391, or simply go to our website to get additional information by just typing in weather.gov/Alaska and click around on the areas that you choose that you're interested in. Now, let's go on to the topics of the day, cold topics of the day. Across the Alaska range, we have wind chill advisories out effective now, and that's going to be occurring through Thursday morning. So by noon tomorrow, that should be ending. These wind chills are expected to be 40 to 50 degrees below zero. And we've also included the northern Susitna Valley up there towards Cantwell and Broad Pass. We're seeing an increase of northerly flow all across these areas. And then if we look on towards the north, we do have another wind chill advisory out in this direction, and that is through Friday morning, early Friday morning. And that is for wind chills that are going to range between 45 to 55 degrees below zero. Now down here towards the south, this one's going to start a little bit later for the Kuskokwim Delta. We're expecting wind speeds to increase tomorrow afternoon. So by tomorrow late afternoon, early evening time frame, we'll see wind chills there between 40 to 50 degrees below zero, and that will continue through Thursday night. Now, across the state, it's been very cold today, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But let's start first with your satellite picture. If we look off towards the west, we can see these darker cloud cover all across the state even. It's hard to notice them because it's such a cold air mass. Those cloud tops, when they're that dark gray, it indicates it's a very cold air mass. Now out towards the west there, you can see it's very bright. We do have a warmer system coming up from the Pacific. That warm front is stalling just to the west of Shemya. Now if we look across the southeast, we did have a low pressure system that was spinning across the eastern Gulf. It's losing a little bit of its spin at this point, but you can see that wraparound moisture is moving a plume across the southeast during the afternoon hours, with another weak frontal boundary there in the mid-levels across the panhandle into the central areas of the Gulf of Alaska. Now taking a look at the surface map, the low pressure system that's associated with the system is mainly down here just south of the Dixon entrance. We had an occluded front here during the day, and this is bringing some light snow shower activity between 1 to 2 inches, mainly accumulated across the southeast. They might see another inch more as we go into the evening, but no more than an inch. We do have some weak trough boundaries across the eastern border down into the central areas of the Gulf, and this is just primarily brings some light snow shower activity. We're not expecting more than 1 inch across the interior locations, and then across the northern areas of the state we are seeing some light snow shower activity and some patchy fog across the western coast. Now off here to the west coast, mainly clear conditions, and the winds haven't developed yet across most of the west coast, but we are seeing some northerly flow increase across the Alaska Peninsula between 20 to 35 miles per hour. So we are seeing some light snow with the weak waves rotating through the upper level flow. So blowing snow conditions is going to continue for this area through the overnight hours. Meanwhile, that front out towards the west is going to be weakening, bring mainly some light rain showers, not getting into the Aleutians during the overnight time. During the overnight, we will see this ridge still persisting across the central areas and southern areas of the Bering, so dry, quieter conditions. And as we head into Thursday, expect this gradient especially to start tightening up around a low pressure system. That's in the central areas of the Gulf, closer to the eastern Kenai there. So the flow across the southeast probably will pick up again for Skagway between 40 to 50 miles per hour. Also offshore flow across areas like Thompson Pass will be increasing, and we'll see some very strong offshore flow across the Barren Islands there into the Gulf. Alaska Peninsula will be under some gusty snow, light snow showers, so blowing snow all across the southwest here, just off the coast. And the Pribilof Islands will see some light snow shower conditions too, possibly reducing visibilities at times. However, the northern areas, they'll see some light snow as well. The eastern areas of the Brooks Range, some blowing snow. Primarily, they had some snow from the last few days, very dry, cold. So all across the Brooks Range, expect possible blowing snow conditions if you're in that area, and patchy fog up there along the coast. As we head into your Friday forecast, expect drier conditions inland as the air mass does tend to dry out, and we do keep this offshore flow component, a very tight pressure gradient all around this low pressure system that remains just to the south of the Gulf location. With this ridge staying in place out towards the west, the tightest gradient flow is going to be across the Alaska Peninsula, so blowing snow conditions will continue through the end of the week. Perhaps some light snow showers across the southeast, but no accumulations are expected as a drier offshore flow is going to continue in this area as well. Now for the western Aleutians, the secondary push in the upper level system is going to be bringing some mixed precipitation, snow out ahead of the frontal boundary that's going to be pushing towards Shemya, and some light rain mainly for the western Aleutians in that direction. The low pressure system is going to be moving across the Kamchatka Peninsula, but not making much further progress as this high pressure kind of relocates up to the northwest coast. You can take a look up to the north and it becomes a 1,047 millibar ridge. So we're shifting basically from the southern Bering back to the north, but that ridge is going to be blocking any low pressure system from making further progress towards the mainland. So once again, we're going to stay cold through the end of the week. So the temperatures you're experiencing now are pretty much going to be the same trend as we head through Friday. Speaking about temperature trends, here we are for Thursday morning, looking at overnight lows mainly between the 30 to 40 degree below range all across the interior locations, slightly colder in the areas that typically get a colder pool. So we're expecting those winds to be picking up out of the north, so that's why we have those wind chill advisories, because temperatures are going to be ranging between 10 to 25 below zero in those areas where those advisories are occurring tonight. And then across the north coast, we're seeing temperatures ranging between 20 to 30 below. Out towards the southeast, temperatures are going to be dropping below freezing for most of the area, possibly down near Annette, staying just near freezing. For the southwestern tier of the state, they're going to be in the single digits below zero, while we transition into the eastern Bering to just below freezing in the upper 20s for the Alaska Peninsula. Now, out towards the western areas of the Bering, looking at temperatures in the mid-30s to lower 30s. Warmest out there towards Shemya through your Thursday afternoon, reaching up into the mid to upper 30s, possibly near 41 for Shemya. And then across the interior locations, once again, 20 to 30 degrees below zero, with those gusty winds continuing through the morning hours. And then across the south central locations, expecting temperatures to stay in the single digits for most of the area, with temperatures slightly warmer in the 20s all along the coastal locations, warmest there across the southeast in the mid-30s towards Ketchikan and Annette. Across the northern tier of the state, temperatures are going to be ranging during the afternoon hours between 10 to 25 degrees below zero. As we head into your Friday morning, here's those temperatures persisting in that cold pattern between 25 to 35 below zero across the interior, slightly warmer temperatures again along the coast between 10 to 25 degrees, slightly warmer there in the southeast locations. Across the north and west coast, 15 to 25 below zero persisting. And then across the Bering locations, expect a little bit cooler temperatures for the Alaska Peninsula. We do get that ridge pulling a little bit colder air mass from that north as it kind of repositions itself across the northwest coast. So taps into that Arctic air mass and drops it down through the southwest and across the western areas, again in the mid-30s for the Aleutians. During the afternoon temperatures, the same rises for the western Aleutians. In the Bering in general, will get up into the low to mid-30s across the state. Slightly warmer temperatures across the northern coast there, mainly around 15 degrees below zero, and slightly warming temperatures across the rest of the state.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And now let's go on to the flying weather part of your forecast. Looking at Thursday morning, you can see that we have widespread MVFR conditions stretching across the north coast to the Brooks Range, all the way down towards the eastern areas of the state and the Gulf. Expect some IFR conditions there across the eastern Gulf waters and as well as the eastern areas of the interior, basically along the eastern and central Alaska range during the morning time. Also some patchy IFR conditions there for the southeast, and for the western areas of the state, mostly VFR conditions there with MVFR conditions across much of the eastern and central Bering, and IFR conditions also. Looking at the Alaska Peninsula being down in MVFR conditions through much of the day, with IFR conditions settling in during Thursday afternoon. For the northern tier of the state, we'll see some improving conditions across the Brooks Range, but expect MVFR conditions to continue across the north coast. Now, as we look at the eastern areas of the state, we'll see the IFR conditions slipping up towards the Alaska Range, so be on the lookout for that. And much of the Bering will be down in MVFR to IFR conditions. Again, patchy MVFR conditions for the southeast. Now take a look at your Friday morning. Persisting conditions across the Gulf with widespread MVFR and IFR conditions, and we'll see some MVFR conditions creeping into the central areas of the state. Now across the north, MVFR conditions move back in towards the Brooks Range, and the eastern waters will continue to see that MVFR conditions and IFR conditions overspreading across the Alaska Peninsula, and also during the afternoon expect MVFR and IFR conditions out towards the western Aleutians. Same conditions will persist, some improvement across the southern areas of the Gulf of Alaska there, with IFR conditions possible for areas across the southeast just north of the Dixon entrance, and across the north still continuing in MVFR conditions. Let's take a look at the weather pattern. Your passes in more depth. Starting with Anaktuvuk Pass, we're going to see MVFR improving to VFR later on Thursday. For Adigan Pass, look for MVFR going to VFR, and we'll also see better conditions for the southwest with Lake Clark and Merrill Pass staying VFR conditions, and Rainy Pass will also be VFR. For Windy Pass, MVFR will go down to IFR during the afternoon. Isabel will go IFR to MVFR. And Mentasta Pass will be MVFR conditions all day. Tenita will go VFR to MVFR in the afternoon. We'll see Portage at IFR pretty much all day. And then we'll see Chilkoot and White Pass prevailing VFR with possible MVFR conditions, but it would be brief. Now for your freezing levels tomorrow morning, we have the surface freezing level draped across the northern and eastern areas of the Bering, and then taking a swing up towards the Panhandle. And the 2,000-foot heights are down there by the Dixon entrance, and we'll see height rises across the western areas of the Bering to 6,000 feet towards the western Aleutians. And now look for your icing below 8,000 feet across much of the eastern and central waters of the Bering. And then we'll also see some light icing possibilities across the eastern border of the state and the eastern Gulf waters. Take a look at your jet stream across the area. We'll see a highly amplified pattern continuing across the Bering, a little bit more amplified than yesterday even. Strong jet around this system at 110 to 150 knots, and a broad trough pattern across the state area with the main jet stream staying well below the Gulf. Now at your 9,000 foot level, we have a low pressure center that's here near the Kenai Peninsula. A change of wind direction around this system with a 35 to 50 knot jet stream around the core of this low. Lighter wind speeds to the north, 15 to 20 knots, and about 25 knots over the southeast. Across the western areas of the Bering, between 50 to 55 knots around the periphery of the ridge center, with 50 to 60 knots across the eastern border between high and low pressure. So you've got your strongest gradients between these two systems. Looking at your 3,000-foot winds, same pattern with the 50 to 60 knot flow between the high and low pressure system, and change the wind direction around this low pressure system, a little bit more of a speed max there towards the coast. To sum up all your turbulence here across the map, you'll see that the main concerns are going to be across the south and southwestern areas of the state, and as well as the western Aleutian.
Just as the sun is part of weather on Earth, it also affects weather in space. The sun creates solar wind by steadily releasing a flow of plasma particles in all directions around it. Sometimes the sun gives off a flash of light and X-rays. This is known as a solar flare. When massive bursts of particles explode into space, we call it a coronal mass ejection, or CME. When a CME is directed toward Earth, it hits the magnetosphere, the magnetic field around our planet that protects us. If the storm is large, we may even get to enjoy a light display in the sky called the auroras. In space, satellites may be damaged, and astronauts should take cover. On Earth, people do not feel any physical effects. We may lose electricity in some areas, polar flights may be rerouted, and satellite services may be disrupted. While these situations aren't ideal, they are rare and fixable. This is why we will continue to study the sun and its interactions with Earth and the solar system.
Longing for more space, open skies, and exotic travel? Then look up, about 30 to 600 miles straight up, at the ionosphere, Earth's interface to space. Nestled far above the clouds but below outer space, this little understood destination invites you to explore its many features. Experience both the weather from Earth and the weather from space. Marvel at the ballet of radio waves and navigation signals, like GPS, leaping through this particle paradise. Sit back, relax, and take in the aurora, some satellites, and the International Space Station as they sail by. And you'll want your camera handy for one of the region's signature features, bright and colorful air glow. This daily show is made possible by the ionosphere's own swarming charged particles, because that's what the ionosphere is. It's all charged particles. During the day, enjoy the sea of particles, freshly energized by the sun. As the sun sets, this particle party relaxes and the air glow thins. Our quieter nightlife lets you gaze into clearer skies. The ionosphere is in constant motion, an amazing effect of space weather. Don't miss when solar storms rain down. The storm separates the particles even more, making this colorful region delightfully more dense in some places and stunningly sparse in others. And don't forget about storms from Earth below. Your weather from back home also stirs up this one-of-a-kind destination. Experience the unique beauty of every season, as changes in Earth's atmosphere, daily and annually, can create pressure waves, changing the ionosphere's shape and density. Venture to the equator, where our particles are packed in lush and thick. Cruise along a magnetic field line and see how the ionosphere's charged material also interacts with Earth's own magnetic field. Don't miss the superhighway of particles zipping out to space and back down to the planet. This unpredictable parade of charged particles can help you unplug and unwind. This is because the crowd of particles can garble the radio and satellite communications from home. The ionosphere welcomes you to discover more about this little-known region. After all, once you've explored this interface to space, who knows how much farther you'll be able to go.
When a star, bigger and more massive than the Sun, runs out of fuel at the end of its life, its core collapses while the outer layers are blown off in a supernova explosion. What's left behind depends on the star's original mass. A star roughly 10 to 20 times our Sun leaves behind a neutron star. A more massive star becomes a black hole. Unlike black holes, neutron stars are directly observable, usually as pulsars, the lighthouses of the cosmos. Discovered 50 years ago, they are the densest observable objects in the universe. Neutron stars compress up to twice the Sun's mass into a city-sized sphere. Matter is packed so tightly that a teaspoon of neutron star interior would weigh more than 1 billion tons on Earth. Still, the nature of the ultra-dense matter in the cores of neutron stars is unknown. Because neutron stars pack so much mass into such a tiny volume, they produce gravity strong enough to bend the light they emit, distorting their appearance in a way that enables the mass and size of the star to be measured. Scientists cannot reproduce the extreme conditions in and around neutron stars on Earth. They must look into the galaxy to answer decades-old questions about extreme matter and gravity. NASA's Neutron Star Interior Composition Explorer mission, or NISA, will make X-ray observations of neutron stars from its perch on the International Space Station. It will give astronomers more insight into these mysterious objects, helping determine what is under their surface. A multi-purpose mission, NISA includes a technology demonstration called Sextant. It will analyze NISA's observations to validate the use of rapidly rotating neutron stars as navigation beacons for travel in deep space throughout the solar system and beyond.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And now on to the marine portion of the show, and we're going to take a look first at the Cook Inlet. Here we have the ice edge that's continuing to expand further to the south. Expect 10 to 20 nautical miles expansion in the next several days. Now across the eastern Bering, the ice edge is expanding as well. Here across we can see some additional growth across the eastern Alaska Peninsula, and we're expecting that to expand as well with the strong northerly flow through the end of the week. And we're also going to see possible strips of ice being torn to the south from the ice edge as we get that strong northerly flow. Now let's take a look at the southeast forecast. As we head into your Thursday, the winds will be out of the north to northeast direction across the inner channels, with the strongest winds towards the northern Lynn Canal, 30 knots, small craft advisory there. And then we'll see the outer waters between 20 to 25 knots, small craft advisory there to the north. Seas on this day across the inner channels will be between 2 to 6 feet, and across the outer waters between 8 to 10 feet. As we head into your Friday, expect that strong wind pattern to continue with gales up there to the north, and then we'll see a change in wind direction back to the southeast. We'll see small craft across the area, except just to the west here of the Dixon entrance. We'll see more of a southwesterly lighter wind speed at 20 knots, and then changing back to the east direction, 25 to 30 knots. And then we'll see seas between 5 to 7 feet across the inner channels, and the outer waters will be between 9 to 10 feet. Take a look at the north and western Gulf locations. Strong northerly flow will be storm force across the tip of the Kenai there at 55 knots and possibly higher gusts as you head further to the east. And we'll see that northerly flow, small craft across the Gulf waters. A little bit lighter flow across the Cook Inlet with seas between 3 to 5 feet, 4 feet for the Prince William Sound, and then across the Gulf expect 7 to 10 feet. That's up around the stronger winds, 16 to 21 feet. As we head into your Friday forecast, a little bit of a wind directional change across the area. Northeasterly flow becoming more of a southeasterly flow to the southern Gulf there, and small craft for across much of the Gulf waters and across the Cook Inlet, with seas between 5 to 7 feet for the inlet, and we'll see 4 feet across Prince William Sound, 12 feet across the northern Gulf, and 6 to 8 feet elsewhere. Now let's take a look at your Thursday forecast across the Alaska Peninsula. We're looking at 25 to 40 knots, the strongest winds towards Kodiak Island. So gale criteria out there with stronger winds setting up for your Friday forecast. Looking at gales with a strong northerly flow continuing through Friday. Seas on this day will be increasing 14 to 17 feet across those strong windy areas. Now for your Thursday forecast across the Aleutian chain, expect change of wind direction around the ridging in the central Aleutians there. Strong southeasterly flow becoming more of a northwesterly flow. Small craft across the eastern Aleutians and gales out there towards the west. On your Friday forecast, stronger winds across the entire area with 30 to 45 knots out of the southeast direction for the western Aleutians. More of a northerly flow across the eastern chain with 35 to 40 knots on tap. And then we'll see seas on this day varying from the 15 to 17 feet, becoming a little bit lower in heights across the central Aleutians between 4 to 8 feet, and then out there towards the west between 25 to 30 foot heights on Friday. Now for your Thursday forecast across the west coast, strong northerly flow with a small craft advisory there south of Nunivak Island. Seas in ice-free waters 2 to 10 feet. And then we'll see stronger winds yet on your Friday forecast with 25 to 35 knots on average. 40 knots just south of Nunivak Island there. Seas on this day will be between 4 to 9 feet. Looking at your north and west coast, we'll see light wind speeds out of the east direction 5 to 15 knots becoming stronger towards Kotzebue, and the Bering Strait 15 to 20 knots. Of course, this is all ice covered for these locations, and a little bit stronger winds on your Friday forecast, brisk winds out there towards the Chukchi Sea and south towards the Bering Strait. Now let's take a look at, recap your forecast here. Across the areas inland, just some light snow shower activity with low pressure beginning to diminish across the southeast, maybe 1 inch of snow yet for tonight. And then strong offshore flow will be picking up across the area between 30 to 50 miles per hour for these locations along the coastal areas, especially channel terrain. Drier conditions further inland with high pressure continuing across the central Bering. We'll see a strong offshore flow as well for the coastal locations through the end of the week. Have a great night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.